There are moments when I sit alone and wonder, will I feel less tired next year? Because this whole year, I have felt this constant, lingering exhaustion, like it's been building up day by day. Tired from worrying, from carrying burdens, from having too many things weighing me down, not even knowing where to begin letting go. When people are young, they tend to ask really big questions. Will I be rich? Will I be successful? Will I be better than others? But after living long enough and going through enough struggles, those questions naturally become smaller. People stop wishing for greatness. They just hope that the new year will not feel heavier, that their health will not decline too fast, that no new problems arise in their family, that their finances are manageable, that their mental state can stay steady. Just that alone can lift a big weight off the heart. Are you feeling the same way? You are not waiting for an explosive year. You are simply hoping for a year where you do not have to stretch yourself too thin, where you are not constantly forcing yourself to be strong, where you do not have to stay on edge all the time just to hold things together. For many people, just living an ordinary life without falling apart is already something truly precious. That is why today, I'm sitting down to make this video, so we can take a moment to look ahead to the year 2026, the year of the horse, as the next stretch of road ahead. For some people born in certain years, this path might be a little smoother, with a bit less resistance and a bit more breathing room. This is just so we can be more aware of what is coming and hopefully feel less tired walking through it. Before we get into the main content, if you feel like it, take a very short moment just for yourself. Leave a comment with a simple little wish, hoping for a simpler year ahead. Just think of that comment as a gentle reminder to yourself. And now, before I start talking about which birth years are more in sync or not so much in the year 2026, I want to clarify one important thing. Because if we misunderstand what a good year really means, our emotions can easily get thrown off, sometimes feeling overly hopeful, other times overly anxious. So let's make it clear from the beginning. Before I talk about which birth years are more in sync or not so much in the year 2026, I want us to sit together for a moment and clear up something that often gets misunderstood. Many people hear the phrase "good year" and immediately start imagining all kinds of things: plenty of money, success in everything, illnesses disappearing like magic. But honestly, in the years I have lived through and considered smooth, most of them were not flashy, not loud, and showed no special signs on the outside. There were years that, looking back, did not come with any major accomplishments to brag about, but while living through them, one thing was very clear. I was not being crushed. When things came up, I was able to handle them. Yes, I was still tired but not burned out. Yes, I still felt sad, but I did not spiral. Most importantly, my mind stayed clear enough to know when to stop before hurting myself. To me, that already counts as a good year. I remember a period when I was living in the United States, and at the time, I knew nothing about yearly energies or feng shui. I just felt like that year had a constant stream of little setbacks. Nothing big or shocking, just enough to wear me down. Back then, I assumed it was because I was not trying hard enough. So I pushed myself to work more, move faster, and be stronger. But the result? Things did not improve. Instead, I just ended up more exhausted. Looking back now, I understand. That was not a year for pushing forward. It was a year for maintaining, but I did not know that. So when I say some people will have a more favorable year in 2026, I do not mean those people will suddenly get lucky or be given special treatment. What I mean is that, for them, the year might come with less invisible resistance. When they move in the right direction, the results may show up a little easier. When they are tired, their mind and body might not crash too hard. When life throws something at them, they will still have enough clarity to navigate through it, instead of getting swept away right from the start. In traditional astrology or feng shui, people often talk about fate, energy flow, and timing. I do not use those terms to make things sound mystical. I just understand it in a very down-to-earth way. There are periods in life when the environment around you and the pace of the world are not working against you so much. You do the same thing, but doing it in one year feels smoother than in another. Not because you suddenly got more skilled, but because you are being held back less. Let me give you a simple image to make this easier. Imagine walking. Sometimes the road is flat, and sometimes the wind is blowing hard against you. Whether you are strong or weak, you can definitely feel the difference. A favorable year is like a flat path. You still have to walk, still have to move forward, but you are not constantly being slapped in the face by the wind, and just that alone can make a huge difference in how tired you feel. That is also why a favorable year does not magically turn someone into a successful person, but it gives them something very valuable: breathing room. Breathing room to think more clearly, to fix mistakes without paying too heavy a price, to return to taking care of their health, their family, and their mental well-being. For those who have lived long enough, this breathing room is sometimes more valuable than money. I often hear older aunts and uncles say something very real to me. These days, I do not wish for much, just hoping each year does not come at me too hard. Honestly, that is exactly what it means to wish for a favorable year. No need for big blessings, no need for dramatic breakthroughs, just enough peace to actually live like a human being. So, in this video, when I mention birth years that are considered to have better alignment in 2026, take it lightly. Not to compare yourself with others, not to set expectations too high, but simply to ask yourself one honest question. If this year does not drag me down as much, how will I use that space to take care of myself? So now, let us begin the part that many people have been waiting for, but I will not present it in the usual "this age is lucky, that age is doomed" style. I will break it down into different age groups so everyone can reflect on their own life situation. Some groups need to conserve energy, some need to reset their pace, some are in a good place to make a shift, and some are well positioned to lay a foundation. You do not need to remember it all. Just pause when you hear something that resonates with you, and take note of one small thing just to make next year a little easier. First, the older age group. Let me be honest. When I talk about people entering the year 2026 at an older age, I do not look at them through the lens of, will they receive great blessings this year? At this stage in life, people are no longer chasing breakthroughs or comparisons. What matters is not being dragged down too quickly, keeping health steady, staying mentally grounded, avoiding new family issues that might force them to carry more weight. For those born in 1950 year of the tiger, 1953 year of the snake, and 1962 also year of the tiger, the year 2026 is considered relatively smooth. Not because it brings anything dramatic, but because there are fewer signs of major disruptions. No negative stars stand out. Strong turbulence is not part of the overall energy. It might sound simple, but for someone in their 60s or 70s, that kind of calm is incredibly valuable. I once heard an elder say something that really stayed with me. These days, just getting through the year without big problems is already a blessing. That is not being pessimistic, it is being realistic. Because at this age, even a small health or mental issue can turn everything upside down. So, a year where routines stay steady, sleep and meals are not too disrupted, and the mind feels light that is already a good year. For this group, what makes 2026 a good year is not how much they gain, but how well they hold on to what they have, not losing strength too quickly, not losing sleep for long stretches, not getting pulled into endless worries about grandchildren, money, or illness. When the mind is calm, the body often follows. I have noticed many elders do not always realize when they are in a good year. They just feel that things are a bit easier. Checkups do not bring bad news. Routines are not turned upside down. Family issues can be handled without long stress. These are quiet signs of a peaceful year. But let me be clear, a smooth year does not mean you can do everything. For this age group, 2026 is good for staying steady, not pushing limits. If you overwork, worry too much, or take on too much, even a good year can still wear you down. The year gives you space to breathe, but it is up to you to take that breath. I often remind older folks of one thing. If people say the year is calm, then live calmly. Sleep a bit earlier. Let go of what you cannot control. Not everything about your children and grandchildren is yours to solve. Not every issue needs your involvement. If you can keep that mindset, the good energy of the year can truly help. For those born in 1950, 1953, or 1962, 2026 feels like a year to breathe steadily, when the body and mind are not being squeezed. If you slow down, tidy up your daily rhythm, the year often passes gently. There is no need for big goals. Just avoid draining yourself, and that alone means you are moving in sync with the year. And I believe for many at this age, a year like that is already a blessing. You do not need anyone's praise. You just need to reach the end of the year and say, "I stayed steady. That is enough." Second, the middle-aged group. When I talk about those in the middle-aged group entering the year 2026, I always get a clear sense that this is no longer a stage in life where you can just live on impulse. At this age, people often carry many responsibilities at once: work, family, children, health that's starting to decline, and a mind that rarely gets real rest. So for this group, a favorable year does not mean everything goes smoothly on its own, but rather that you know when to hold steady and when to open up. For those born in 1968 year of the monkey, 197, 7 year of the snake, 198, 0Y year of the monkey, and 1982 year of the dog, the year 2026 is considered a year that can shift in a positive direction if you can catch the right rhythm. It is not a year free of responsibilities or pressure, but one where those pressures do not pile up all at once. When one thing ends, another does not immediately crash in. This kind of space matters a lot to people in midlife, because it gives just enough room to breathe and readjust. I have been right at this point myself, so I know exactly how it feels. There were years when one issue was not yet resolved, and another had already arrived. The mind was always tense, sleep was shallow, even though everything on the outside looked fine. But there were also years where I was still busy and still had to deal with things, but I did not feel overwhelmed inside. If I made a mistake, there was time to fix it. If I got tired, I allowed myself to pause, and when I looked back, I saw that those years did not drain me as much. For this group, what makes 2026 favorable is the chance to rearrange things, maybe your work life, by carrying a little less, maybe your relationships, by knowing what to address and what to let go, or maybe your health, by noticing signs before your body forces you to stop. This year gives you a chance to adjust, but it does not force you. Whether you take that chance or not is still your choice. Let me also say this clearly, so you can reflect. 2026 is not a year for this group to take big risks. Rash decisions, driven by greed or impatience, are not likely to be supported by the energy of the year. But if your steps are thoughtful and prepared ahead of time, the year is more likely to respond positively. Not in the form of huge wins, but in the sense that wherever you go, there is a path forward. Many people in this group have told me, "These days I am afraid to act, but doing nothing also feels stuck." A favorable year does not fix that fear for you. It simply creates better conditions, so if you act with balance, the cost of failure is not too high. And for someone with a family and responsibilities, that matters much more than taking a big gamble. For those born in 1968, 1977, 1980, or 1982, 2026 feels like a door that opens just enough. It is not wide open for you to rush through, but it is not shut tight either. If you know how to pause and pay attention to your body and your situation, you can usually make the most of this year. You do not need a dramatic breakthrough, just move in rhythm, and the results will come naturally. Third, the group in transition. When I talk about people in the middle of a life transition, I find this group is the easiest to misunderstand the phrase favorable year, because at this stage, people are often tired, worried, or standing at big crossroads. So when someone tells them a year will be good, they feel both hopeful and impatient. But the truth is, for this group, the favorable energy of 2026 is not about staying still. It is about shifting in the right direction. For those born in 198, 6 year of the tiger, and 198, 9 year of the snake, 2026 is seen as a fairly good year, but not an easy one. It is a year when life pushes you to look hard at everything, where your career is going, which relationships to keep or let go, and most importantly, are you living by your own choices or just following other people's expectations? I have seen many people at this age silently exhausted, not young enough to take wild chances, not stable enough to fully let go. So when they hear a year is good, they quickly expect things to feel easier. But in reality, what makes 2026 favorable for this group is the chance to change, not escape. This year might come with a few small issues, minor conflicts, or sudden obstacles. But the difference is, these things are not dead ends. They force you to face them, but they also come with potential solutions. If you stay clear-headed and slow down, you will likely learn something very important from what happens this year. I went through a phase like this myself. Some years looked fine on the outside, but inside, everything was tangled. If someone had told me back then, "This is a good year," but looking back, I realize it was those very bumps that made me change how I lived, how I thought, and helped me let go of what no longer fit. Without those bumps, I might have stayed stuck for a long time. For those born in 1986 and 1989, 2026 is not a year to run fast. It is a year to choose your path. If big decisions are made carefully, not rushed, not based on fleeting emotions, they often lead to better long-term outcomes. But if you act out of impatience, afraid of falling behind, you are likely to burn out or go the wrong way. Another key part of this year is that if you take time to observe yourself, you will clearly see what is draining your energy. Some people realize their job no longer fits. Some realize they have sacrificed too much for others and forgotten themselves. Some see that they are living in a rhythm that is not truly theirs. Even if you are not ready to change everything right away, seeing that truth is already a big step. So if you are part of this group and thinking about 2026, I just want to say one honest thing. Do not expect the year to be completely smooth, but do not be afraid either. If you slow down just a little, listen more to your body and your heart, what happens this year will not drag you down. It will likely push you in a direction that suits you better. And to me, that already makes it a good year. Fourth, the younger group. When I talk about people born in 1998 year of the tiger and 2000 year of the dragon, entering 2026, I notice a very different kind of energy compared to other age groups. This is a group that is still young, still strong, still full of choices, but also the most easily confused. Not because they lack ability, but because they are not yet sure if they are on the right path. So when they hear the phrase, favorable year, many may mistakenly think it means a year to launch big, act fast, or achieve something massive. But honestly, for this group, 2026 is favorable for building, not for shortcuts. For those born in 1998 and 2000, 2026 is seen as a traditionally lucky year. Few standout challenges, relatively balanced energy, ideal for foundational steps like starting a career, continuing education, defining direction, or even settling down. But this kind of luck is not impulsive, it is slow and steady. I have noticed many young people tend to get anxious. Seeing others succeed early makes them worry. Watching friends change their lives quickly makes them panic. Then they wonder, am I falling behind? In years like this, the real danger is not a lack of opportunity, it is pushing yourself to go faster than your natural pace. The year gives you a good foundation, but if you build too quickly, that base can crack. I remember when I was young, I really disliked hearing, "Take your time." To me, going slow felt like falling behind. But looking back, the times I moved slowly but carefully, studying well, working thoughtfully, living with intention, were the years that cost me the least later on. The times I rushed, the price came later, and it hurt. For the younger group in 2026, the biggest benefit is finding the right path if you pay attention and notice the small signs. You might meet a mentor. You might discover which field suits you or does not. You might let go of something that sounds impressive to choose something more practical. These decisions may not look exciting at first, but they are solid in the long term. This year is also good for steadying personal matters. Not to marry or start a career just to meet timelines or compare with others, but to step into a life rhythm you can sustain. When your daily routine is steady and your mind is clear, the road ahead gets much easier to see. One more thing I want to say to this group. A favorable year does not mean you will not mess up. Mistakes still happen. But this year, if your mistakes come from learning or thoughtful trials, the cost is often manageable. You still have time to fix, restart, and adjust. That is a gift. By now, I think most listeners already know where they fit in the 2026 picture. Some feel aligned with a favorable group, some do not. But if you ask me, after many years that seemed bad but were not, and others that looked good but turned out tough, my simple takeaway is this. A good year is not a year without problems. It is a year where you are still standing when they come. The birth years in this video are simply signs to help you understand the rhythm of the year. If the year flows smoothly, do not push yourself too hard. If it asks you to hold back, take fewer risks. Not out of fear, but to live in sync with your energy. I have never believed fate controls all. But I do believe that going against your own rhythm for too long wears you out more than anything else. I also want to be clear, especially to the elders who no longer expect miracles. If your 2026 is a year where you sleep better, worry less, your family stays calm, and your health holds steady, that, to me, is already a very good year. No approval needed. No comparison required. And if you are younger, still building your life, please remember this. A favorable year is not for rushing to prove yourself. It is for laying the foundation for a lasting journey. Going a bit slower is not losing. Sometimes, it is the only way not to start over from the beginning. Before ending this video, if you want, take a very short moment for yourself. You do not have to say it out loud, just quietly think, I hope next year I will be clear-headed enough not to make life harder for myself. Even that simple thought is already a very kind wish. Thank you for staying until the end of this video. Not to believe every word I said, but to listen and reflect. If after turning this off, your heart feels a little lighter, your mind a little less overwhelmed, then to me, that alone already makes this message worth sharing.